Hey, it's Christy with Functional Tips for Friday. All right, I want to talk about food sensitivities. I'm going to do some myth busting and just give you some good old facts about what they are, why they happen, and yeah. So let's get started. Food sensitivities are one of the number one things that people talk to me about, and one of the number one reasons that people actually approach me because they hear about food sensitivities and so they want to get tested, which I love because they play a big role in our health. But it's really important to understand what food sensitivities stem from. So why do we have them? And how to deal with them properly. You guys, I have had people that have taken food sensitivity tests up to almost a decade ago and have kicked those foods to the curb. So for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, they have never ate that food again because it showed up one time on a food sensitivity test, and so they just thought that they would be sensitive to it forever. It's heartbreaking to me because that's not how this works and that's not what happens. And so when we deal with the what and not the why, that's when we get confused and we're dealing with the wrong issue. The issue isn't the food. The issue is why is the food getting into the wrong place so that the immune system is being alarmed and then attacks it. And so let me put this into perspective a little bit. So in the gut, we have a mucosal lining, and the purpose of that mucosal lining is to be semi-permeable, right? So we need to have some sort of permeability so that our nutrients, vitamins, protein, everything can get into the body, but we need it to be closed enough that toxins and pathogenic bacteria, different things don't get exposed to the immune system. So it has a role. It needs to keep things in, but it also has to let some things through or our body wouldn't have any access to the vitamins and nutrients. So this mucosal lining that runs on the inside of our GI tract, it's actually about 1 cell thick. And so that's about the thickness of like a tomato skin. And when we eat processed foods, refined like oils that are oxidized, birth control pills, Tylenol, ibuprofen. Basically, when we live life for a few years, we can create some intestinal permeability, which means, or a leaky gut is another way that you can put it, where food is now it has exposure to places in the immune system into the body that it shouldn't because the barrier is not intact. So to put this in perspective, water isn't a bad thing, right? Water is amazing. There's nothing wrong with water. However, if you're filling up a bathtub and your bathtub has a leak in it and the water starts to go all over your bathroom floor, you are absolutely going to respond differently to water. It's no longer your friend. So you go into probably a little bit of panic mode and you start attacking the water to clean it up because it's something that's good that's in the wrong place. Now the issue is not the water, right? We can all agree on that. There's nothing wrong with the water. The water did not do anything wrong. The barrier had an issue. So if you patch that up, you get a new bathtub, whatever you need to do, and then you go and you fill up your bathtub and you're going to have a nice relaxing bath because the barrier is intact, you have a completely different response. You're going to relax. You are going to have a nice, enjoyable soak in the tub. And so it's different. So right there, you can see that it wasn't the water, but the response is very much different depending on whether the barrier was intact. The same thing is true for our intestinal lining. When the barrier is not intact and food gets into places or to be honest, like by the time that it's down in the intestinal lining, it's just molecules of food. It should have been digested enough that it's down to really like a molecular level or a nutrient level. And so it's no longer large pieces of food put together. And so when that happens, it should be inside the GI. If it's not, because we have intestinal permeability, the body does exactly what it's supposed to do. It says, hey, there's a foreign invader, even though it's not a foreign invader oftentimes. It's really not. It's just a regular, maybe it's even a healthy food. But it's in the wrong place. The body sets an alarm system off It creates an antibody called an IgG, and it attacks the food because that's what it's supposed to do. There is a reason and a purpose for our design, and that our immune system has 2/3 of the immune system residing right outside of the gut lining. And that's because most often things that get into our body get there through our mouth, right? Our skin is permeable as well. So it's like a big mouth is our skin. So things can get in other ways too. But most commonly, we eat food or we eat food-like substances, depending on what you're choosing to eat that day. And so when I hear of people that have just completely, hey, I'm going to get a food sensitivity test, and I ask, great, what are you going to do with the results once you receive them? Oh, I'm just going to cut them out. I'm going to just kick those foods to the curb. And you know what? They might feel great for a while, but if they didn't address why the food was getting into the wrong place, it's going to happen with a new set of foods. The interesting thing is IgGs last roughly on average about 28 days. So the antibody is alive and there for 28 days. So after a month passes, your body typically is not going to be alarmed by that food until you eat it again and it gets into the wrong place. So this is an average. About 75% of the foods that are on somebody's food sensitivity test, if you deal with the why, you can eat them again. And that's great and that's wonderful. So it makes me sad, especially when I hear that it's like, oh, these were my favorite foods. These are the foods I ate most often. It's like, yeah, that's sad. You want to eat that again. Like, let's get down to the root of why that happened and let's reintroduce them so that you can enjoy those foods again. The other thing is sometimes people don't digest their food properly, and so that can be another trigger. When a food doesn't look like it's supposed to look to the body, so maybe you were running around very stressed, you had a big meeting to do, your kids were a little crazy, whatever it might be, and you were eating while you were dealing with whatever was stressful in your life. The body shuts down digestion. In fact, we don't secrete enough stomach acid when we are in a very stressed, sympathetic state. And so it wasn't really how we were meant to eat our food. When we were hunters and gatherers, people weren't running from bears and shoving, eating. And the body just doesn't realize that you're just driving on the interstate and stuck in traffic. And that's why you're stressed. It thinks that you're probably running for your life. It can't differentiate the running from a bear or stress because you lost your keys. But either way, your digestion isn't working properly. And so then what can happen is the food is not broken down into proper sizes. The body isn't seeing the food in the correct form that it normally does, if that makes sense. So when food is still in too large of a particle, or like just too big of a piece of food, it made it past the stomach, wasn't digested, it responds to that because it's like, something isn't right. I don't know what this huge piece of cheeseburger is, but it doesn't look like a protein to me. It's not a it's all still stuck together. What's happening? And so then it can create an adverse response from the immune system, and the immune system can tag it like it does, like, oh, foreign invader, and now it can have an antibody tied to it. So when you address the issue of the digestion or whatever could be going on upstream, then chances are you'll be able to eat that again. And I hope that's helpful, or that this is helpful, because I don't want people to be fearful of food, and I want there to be hope. If you are somebody who has taken a food sensitivity test and just kicked that stuff to the curb and you haven't dealt with the why, I think that you should, because I think you'll be very surprised, even if you did another food sensitivity test and you saw all of those foods probably aren't on it because the 28 days is past, and so the IgG is no longer responding, and all of the foods that you eat today would maybe show up, because it's like this vicious cycle of whatever we're exposing our body to is what it's going to create antibodies against. So there's your functional tips for today. I hope that you guys have a great day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.